All right, guys, how we doing? Sam here with you. It's Wednesday the 17th. Oh, sorry for the late start today. It's so annoying when running this business gets in the way of my trading, but that's the reality of the situation here. So I apologize for the late start here, but we can probably get a couple done. Now so I'm just picking up here. This is right out of the chart room here. We've got this under crypto alts here. Some of you may have seen this here. So I posted up two ways to enter here, two different stop locations. So this was tied off of to us coming down, banging the 50. So as we had that little bounce, I gave you two entries here, two different locations, or the idea possibly to average down your fill. So if you took the little one, stopped out, now waiting for a retrace. If you took the longer, allowed for the larger stop here, you still got about a 4-to-1 here. This was great at 13, almost over 13-to-1, but that one gets stopped out. So if you're still long off of this, or as I will often suggest, a small bite on the first one, you can go larger on the second, depending on what your stop placement here. Or if you're out now, if we do have a good low here, and there's a case to be made for it. Now, perhaps a retest here. You can see I've got some median lines here. A retest of the median line. If the low is in, the retrace then sets up the potential for the 3-4 for us to come out of the hole here. So I'm going to take these off here. But of course, you guys members have all seen this. I don't know if this is going to end up on YouTube or not, but it doesn't matter. Let's get into it here. So okay, I think we can all agree we've got a clear impulse off the low here. So look, it would appear that the one wave is in, and we're putting in the second. Plenty of upside here. So we got to dig down here a little. We got to break into the subdivision a little bit here. So I do have a set of modified shift median lines here that per the framing, of course the market gives you the pivots. So per the framing here, this does seem to catch it. Of all of the choices here, of the three choices here, this seems to catch it the best. See here as we struggle. Now, it certainly sets up for this to be retracing directly back. So here would be the 233, right back to the Vegas wave, right back to the median line. But it's certainly not unreasonable to think that that sets up a bounce to head lower. Now, we can complete the countdown here. It's a little bit of a funky count as it is already in that. Well, we'll get to it in a second. And there's probably a couple of different ways you could count this. But right now, this will be a bit of a tell. I'd be surprised if we don't get a reaction here. But as to whether or not we're going up, I have to wait and see. And if we do get that pivot here, then much as I was just demonstrating, the idea would be here if we're going to pop into this node here to the left here, the low volume node. So if we were come up here and pop into that, you've also got this pivot over here and then set up a retrace, then the opportunity to be a buyer with a stop under the pivot is set up for you nicely. Should probably wick that off as well. Just noticing that. So as we come up here, prior structure, a little bit of prior support, it's teed up there for potentially, it's always just that, potentially some resistance. So now the count, it's, at first glance, your eye wants to do just do what's easiest, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'd be down for the 5, right? So but that wouldn't, if it's corrective, right, immediately, that's a bit of a problem. If we're going that, what did we get down to here? 76. So if this were going to be an A wave, well, that would, we know what that would be pointing, what that would be implying for Litecoin. I don't think that that's likely. So I think we can stick with the idea that we are correcting the impulse off of the low here that gave us our one wave. Now, it's a little tricky here in that this, because of the size of this move, I think we do have to go with the W wave here per the ABC that's in that subdivision. I'm still here on a 1 hour. But the C wave is a clear impulse, and there's a little, well, so is the A wave here. So you've got it's a small one, but you've got a little zigzag here into the W wave, ABC into the X. And then, of course, we need an ABC to finish. Now, the symmetry's gotten a bit askew here as we've got A, B. We'd be down here for the C. All of it's just little Bitcoin, all of them, the corrections are, oh, shit. What happened there? All of them, the corrections have been a bit difficult to get a clean, clear count with where you have a lot of conviction to it. So we work with what we've got here. So based on the idea that we've gone WX and this is an ABC. Well, I need a clean motive wave to finish here. In this case, it's offering me a nice impulse if correctly identified. The 1, 2, the 3 is there. The subdivision in the 3 is clearly there. There's a 3, 4, pardon me, ABC into the 4 at the median line, and then again I can finish with an impulse here. But what leaves you a little bit, ill at ease here, calling that the low, is that we're not at a technical pivot. Now we're in the zone, right? If we're looking for a 2, we're always looking for it between the 50 and the 618, which is we literally split the difference. But it took me a bit to find it. So as far as I'm concerned, there are no random pivots in the market. There's always something. So as I look here, I went through the same thing that, of course, I would think members would already have done. So we're looking here. Oh, we take the length of the A projected from the X wave here, and we're just a couple shy of the 1618. So I get at least some technical confluence here. Right, I've got a contender, potentially now a front run off of the W. So it would essentially be the 1618 of the W projected from the X. Right, so I get a little something to cling to here, a little something. All right, maybe I can understand that. Maybe it's a front run off of that. Now here, you note here, I've got so here's the 50, the 0.5 beyond the lower parallel as we've broken that. So we get the running parallel here. So that gives me one thing to work with. All right, so then I'm looking for something in addition. Do I have anything related to the internal AB? So I'd grab the A, project from the B, pull that over. All right, I'm at exactly 200%. So I'm going to fatten this up here. Right, so I'm going to include what we've seen so far. So now I've got two technical components down here to give me some degree of confidence that I've got a good pivot. Looking for the subdivision within in this case, the impulse that comes down, well, it's not great here. So if we go for the 1 to the 2, we get the 786. We get well past third target here. So reasonable candidate that per the 1, 2, this is our 3. But again, just looking for, can I stack the deck down here? Well, the length of the 1 projected from the 4, let's get that right on it. Okay, so now I've got the 2618. So do you see what I'm doing? I'm just stacking technical components here. So I'm going to include the 2618. So now I've got three things here that are giving me some degree, okay, I can understand why. Right? The question is always, why do we stop there? Right? If I can't spot the algo play, and it very well could be, this is algorithmically driven here, so they start at the 50, right? So we came down, we tagged the 50 to the tick, get a little reaction, but not enough legs, and we roll over again here. So it could be this is just some buying support coming in here. Could be that a series of algorithms using this technical confluence here now as I've just built that. But there's one more which I think is absolutely the best. So I've already stacked 3 components into this pivot to explain it, to help me understand it. Last one here is I'm going to go to the Wolf tool. So when I can't find something with typical fib relationships, I will go to the Wolf tool and see, which is really a derivative off of Gann's teaching. So I'm looking for something that would be, I got to get right on that pivot here. So let me pull this off to the side here a little bit. Yeah, so here you can see it here. So note what happens here. So if I come down, so I'm taking the length of the first A. So if this is my initial range of the market. Here's the move down, the retrace goes right to the 50. Then from the 50, I come to the negative 100, back to the 50, back to the negative 100. It's a little shy, but we're back to the lower edge here. Now I'm to the negative 200. To the median line, now I'm back to the minus 300. Do you see how that's giving me one more component here? And this is tagging just beautifully here. I think it was a little tighter. Here we go. So this is just tagging beautifully. So now I've got 4 technical components, all leading to the idea that I've got enough technical confluence down here to start trading this from the long side on the idea that I've completed down here, even though it's smack dab in the middle of the 50 and the 618. Right, 4 components stacking that up. And then additionally here, if you'll note this here, if I get, so this is, I got to go to 4 hour here. You'll note this in the volume profile. I'm just screaming at you. So I'm just wicking off these 2 prior pivot highs. Look how that frames the golden zone, and then look in the middle of the golden zone. right, so you got to recognize that that's potentially now a target down here, as we've got just a hole right at the golden zone. So if this is going to roll over again, if those 4 components now are not going to be enough here, and we're not going to get enough traction to come out of here, and we're going to roll back down again, well, that's clearly you've got a huge confluence here. Now, there's the negative 400, but you've got a huge confluence down here. So even could, right, you can get a bounce here back to the median line, then back to the median line here would set that up as well. So you got to be aware of that may be a magnet for the market if we're going to roll over again and break this low, despite those four confluence points driven off of the swing relationships that I just outlined for you. So I'm long. I'm more than comfortable being long here. I used the larger stop here, so I'm still in this. I like it because it took me a while to get comfortable with that pivot. But now that I've kind of laid that out for you, I think you can work off the idea. If you took the smaller one and you took the small stop, or if you're currently long because you took it at the 50 with a stop under the 65, I think we're potentially now setting up a place for the add, right? This is kind of where I started. If we're going to ting that, we're going to come up and hit the median line, a retrace from that sets up that move. So I will be looking to add there. Now let me go, let's go to the 4 hour here. So I want to see a good, I guess we can take this off now. I want to see a good motive wave come off of this low. So since I know the threat of the move down here, well, it's not that far off here. So there's 76, golden zone starts at 69. Right, it's enough to where, of course, you'd rather not take that drawdown if you're going to try and stay long with a stop under the 65. So there's, maybe a 1-2 getting started there. But, if you go even to the 15-minute, it gets a little squirrely down here. So it's much harder to have a lot of conviction in what you're forecasting here, because it can change so quickly. But maybe you can make a case for a 1, 2, 3 going in. So maybe you could work this. Oh boy, that's a little large. Let's get that. So maybe 3, 4, 5. So I would feel better about this if we're going to go sideways here into a 4 and I get that 5. So I get more confidence in the motive off the low. Well, in this case, it would be an impulse off of this low. So it kind of tees me up here to feel better about the whole thing ending up down here, smack dab in the middle, based on all that confluence I just took you through. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Give me that, and then give me a reasonable. Let me see the separation coming down. That's the next place I'm looking to add. Right here, assuming it's offered, right? We get the opportunity to be a buyer here. So now I don't have this pivot here, but if I were to go up here and I got to change back, if we're going to come up here and pivot at the median line, I guess this would be a little higher. We'd be, well, that's not unreasonable. But anywhere from, well, really, we know second, anywhere from the 50 to the 786. So maybe something down here. I'd love to get this golden zone here. So even down here on a 15-minute, that would set me up for a golden corner here if we get something like that. So now I've got some upside targets here and some framing of the market, letting the market define the geometry yet again. So I think that's worth really looking long and hard at. And it may be the same kind of thing where you'd have an initial smaller size here, always smaller on the first, and then maybe a second bite down here if it's going to go that deep. Trader's choice here. You could put the stop under the 50 at the larger degree. If you want to give it maximum room here, I'd give it a little cushion under the 786. We'd have the pivot of the proposed 1 down here, so you might give that a little more room. It's just your risk tolerance, the size you're trading. It's really... That's trader to trader. I can't advise you there on the size to take, but this would be smaller here because depending on, so if you're not in, I'd go small here, anticipating the possible reload here or the add or laddering in, however you want to think of it. Here for a second bite here, this would be, you can go heavier because the distance to the stop is smaller. So I'd be, as I like to say, appetizer here, here's your entree. If I get the push up here, then I've got a split fill between the two, and then as quickly as I can, I'm going to tighten that stop up, put it under the 65. If I get some traction here, I might tighten it up and then just sit at scratch and see if it's going to run. So that's kind of the way I'm seeing it here. I want to see this little push up here. You know, it's interesting times here as we sit. I've got Bloomberg on in the background as we're going through these hearings in the Senate. It's absolutely remarkable that this is where we are. But nonetheless, right, so the volatility, you know, the fear, the FUD is rampant, right? It's uncertainty. That's what's prevailing across the market is uncertainty. What does this mean? We're going to ban Bitcoin in the U.S. What's the outcome of this, right? They're talking about Libra, but crypto gets lumped in right to the public. It's all lumped together. So interesting times. So, but you know, again, you got to trade what you see, right? You can't worry about that in the background. It can create volatility. So, you know, always with a stop, right? I would never advise you to trade without a stop. So because we have that in the backdrop, you might be a little more conservative on your stop placement. It just depends on the individual again. But it's a broader point here. I do think we have a reasonable expectation based on what I just took you through that the low is in here. Recognizing that another pull back down is not out of the question. So this will be a real test if again, now none of this has happened. First thing, let's tap the median line. If we get a reaction there and head back down, let's see if we hold here. This becomes your stop, right? So this would become the clear stop. If you're taking this trade, right? So you'd be anticipating if it's going to go lower, the next reload will be right down here, right? But no, again, I guess individual choice here is if you want to stay with that drawdown here. It's not, you know, like I said, it's from 76 to stop would be at 64. That's enough that could sting. So again, you know, choose wisely here. Stop placement. But if you get stopped, right, don't. You got to be quick to be able to go to reload and go again, right? If it's there technically, if we come to the golden zone, well, I certainly will be a buyer there. All right, take that for what it's worth. Okay, so there you go. That's probably enough to chew on there in Litecoin. I think we're going to try and get one more for you there. Okay, guys, back to you in a bit.